Hello, Albsterz. After finally completing Security Breach, it is time to have a little look at the ultimate timeline finale. Even though this has been majority debunked already in the community still want me to have a little look at this theory that MatPat come up with because some elements are still true. So Chapter 3, post-Purple Guy. And I've seen John's theory on the most recent one as well.
There is no need for you to return to work next week, as Fazbear Entertainment is no longer
regarding the baby chip inside of her with the virus and the parallel to the books as well. So I'm interested to see what MatPat has come up with.
Entity.
All debts had been paid, all assets redistributed. The company was outright dissolved. Even the memories of the horrors that had happened there started to fade away in the public consciousness. The people were gone too. William was dead. Henry was gone. A whole generation of young Emilys and Aftons had lost their lives to the horrors of the pizzeria.
I still don't think Henry is gone. I don't think he is. Because he killed his door inside of Lefty, and that takes a certain amount of cojones, in order to do that. And we still don't, I was talking about this in the comments with Poison Heart, we don't know what Henry has been up to or what he's capable of. If he was able to pull that off, what else is he able to do?
All of them collateral damage to the man in the bunny suit. Everyone the company had ever touched was dead and gone.
Yeah,
well, all except one.
Pay your child support, you deadbeats! I'm keeping the diamond ring. I also set the house on fire!
Clara Afton. She'd been there in the early days, back when things with William were good. They'd had the perfect home, a thriving business, the ideal family. But shortly after their youngest son died, things started to change. William had become distant, lost in his work, obsessive. She had watched him change from this irritatingly brilliant man that she had fallen in love with to a drunken monster struggling to hold himself together. And despite her—
Hold on, is MatPat gonna try and piece together that the wife might be putting them all back together for the Pizzaplex? That would be kind of cool because we don't know where she is. And then we also have the tie-in with the lion or the tiger or tiger. It's the tiger. In terms of the books as well that could be controlling the Pizzaplex, and something I feel like Henry's going to be involved somehow with the virus, because Afton was able to upload himself digitally. Why couldn't Henry do the same? He was just as smart as him. I know he ended up dying in FNAF 6, but we don't know what he did before he died.
They're trying to reach out to him in those desperate days. He was just too far gone.
Such a good lullaby.
Admit it, you wanted to let me in.
For her sake, she had to leave the relationship. And from there, she largely faded into obscurity. A mystery from
why
William's
would she want to come back?
A footnote in his history. And that was fine for her. She wanted to leave that part of her life behind. She tried to move forward, never wanting to hear the name Freddy Fazbear again. A time defined by mistakes and broken promises. But then, the paperwork started to arrive. As Fazbear Entertainment began to close as a corporate entity, suddenly her mail was flooded with notifications, requests, obligations. She had been there since the beginning, helping William in the early days of his business, and now, as a shareholder and sole living member of the Afton family, all copyrights and trademarks of both Afton Robotics and Fazbear Entertainment passed on to her.
Oh, that would be true because Henry's nowhere to be seen, so they don't know where he is either. So they would come after the wife of Afton with all the friggin' all the copyright, all the trademarks, the whole company in general. So she either is still a holder within the company or she sold it off to someone completely different that we don't even know about, that we'll find out later in this new era of FNAF.
Memories of this past life that she had long left behind. Looking at the blueprints, the contracts, the memos, she felt old wounds begin to reopen. The regrets of a happy family that had been torn away from her. William had always been brilliant. That's what had attracted her to him in the first place. But he'd also been too blinded by obsession and pride. He was too jealous, too petty, too unable to actually see a bigger picture.
See,
now,
I still think there is something with Henry though. Let me know in the comments.
And trauma, she realized it was her turn. She was holding the power. This was her chance. And one thought resonated in her head. I will put them back together. I will put them all back together.
But didn't Michael also put his sister back together? This is another thing that's like stirring the pot in terms of the lore and the theories. Is at the end of, what is it? I think it is Sister Locations. Once you've completed all the custom nights and stuff like that, you get a cutscene that Michael ends up going up to Afton. He's like, oh, I have put him back. Father, I have put her back together. Or like something along them lines, if I remember correctly. So we know that there's a virus at play, but we don't know who is dangling or controlling at the top.
She would be the one to rebuild this family, to rebuild the pieces of that shattered life, to reclaim the kids that Fazbear had stolen from her. But how? Looking at William's work now laid out before her, she knew that he had been onto something, collecting remnant, robotic humanoids, digital conscience transference. The pieces were all in place, they were just scattered, fragmented. It was almost like there were too many ideas going in too many different directions. It was—
See, that's the thing. Like, has he also uploaded his body digitally or something into that? Okay, this might sound a bit crazy, and I don't know because I haven't read the books regarding the up-to-date lore, but I know that Tiger involved could possibly be the master behind all the viruses and stuff that's going on in the Pizzaplex. What happens if that is a version of Henry that has just turned so much, and he's rage for Afton? But then he would be at rest because that's what he was saying. The souls are at rest. I don't know. I feel like I just want to try and dive in to it somehow. But I don't know. With this whole new storyline and lore, I feel like they're just going to move away from all the Aftons and stuff come this DLC.
Such an important idea that she reiterated that point to herself. There were too many ideas going in too many different directions. That said, there had to be a way to save it all. She just needed to put it all back together. But how? To rebuild her family, she would first need to rebuild the franchise that had stolen them away from her. With ownership over the characters, their licenses, the technology patents, and the Fazbear name, she converted the corporation back to an LLC, a structure for smaller businesses that are usually family-owned. The irony was fitting. From there, she would need remnant, and lots of it. Remnant was the key. Clearly, in the later years of his life, William had been using Circus Babies Entertainment and Rentals as a remnant farm, sending robots to kids' birthday parties in the hopes of nabbing bits of the stuff.
So she's going to be doing that on top of that as well?
He had, what, like 4, maybe 5 animatronics going out every week? No. It was a decent idea, but to get the remnant they required, it needed scale. Dozens, hundreds of animatronics all out there, all gathering remnant from unsuspecting customers. But
and that's where the Pizzaplex comes in, because you'd have like tens and thousands of children turning up to watch Freddy perform on stage, and they're just sucking the life out of the children.
Do that would require help, something William would never ask for. William had kept everything in-house. His obsession with control limited him. Clara, though, she wasn't nearly that precious. A plan like this required partners, people outside of Fazbear to do the heavy lifting. So she contacted a mid-sized delivery company, DLZ Shipping Solutions, to help build replicas of all the original animatronics. And with meal delivery apps being all the rage, why not an animatronic delivery service? Order one to celebrate your birthday, your Halloween party. How about a 4th of July picnic? We'll invite Liberty Chica and 4th of July Freddy on over. She would make sure that they made skins for every occasion. Chocolate Bonnies for Easter, Shamrock Freddy's for St. Patrick's Day, Dia de los Muertos Chicas. And
it just sounds like she's just gone full EA. Like, yes, just skins everywhere. Different variants of every single one possible. Now, I'm trying to remember back to... what was his name? That is playing the other side, or like could possibly be the parallel to Henry in the books, that has the mimic or stuff going on as well. And then we tie the... and then... if the virus was a... I don't...
Thus, the Fazbear Funtime service was born.
That's right. With the Fazbear Funtime service, you'll never be alone again. You'll always have someone watching your back.
Was it ridiculous? Absolutely.
Yes,
was
it
it a
is,
sellout?
yeah.
No doubt. It was exactly the sort of thing that William would have hated, but it needed to be done to get enough remnant. Normally, the novelty of ordering an animatronic wore off after like, what, 1, maybe 2 times? But with new skins for new holidays, suddenly you had yourself an animatronic perfect for every occasion.
That's how they keep getting you to come back. back and keep paying that money.
It would keep people hooked. It would keep them ordering the latest and greatest that Fazbear Entertainment LLC had to offer.
That does make sense, though, and that's why they've got
they'd
so
be
many
collecting and
endoskeletons.
returning the remnant back to her. In a word, it was brilliant. There was just one problem with it. No one trusted the Fazbear name. The company's brand was still mud in the public eye.
Yeah,
no one
I'm not
would want to
surprised.
hire animatronics from the restaurant franchise known for murdering children. Nothing kills a party quite like the threat of death, you know. So she needed to find a way to discredit the stories that had come before. She needed to win back the public's affections, reactivate some nostalgia for the spooky stories of their childhood.
Well, you're gonna
She
be the PR
needed
team?
a game. Multiple games, in fact.
They lied to us. They lied to all of us. They told us that the whole point of this VR game was to undo the bad PR done by a rogue indie game developer. But that's not true at all. Those indie games were designed to conceal and make light of what happened. This isn't just an attempt to rebrand. It's an elaborate cover-up.
It's a conspiracy theory. They're trying to cover up the information. We will get it. We will.
Struggling game developers were a dime a dozen online, most working on their magnum opus between shifts at the Dollar General. So she found one. Steve just picked him out of obscurity. The right
Is that what? Is that why William Afton is called Steve in the FNAF movie trailer? Because it's also a reference to Scott being called Steve in this parallel that he's supposed to be a doofus, apparently.
mix of desperate and doofus, willing to say and do anything for a couple extra bucks. And he fell right in line, as expected, delivering stupid little things with dumb generic names like Mangle's Quest, Balloon Boy's Air Adventure, Five Nights at Freddy's. Bad gameplay with even worse graphics, but hey, they got the
So they're trying to write off the original 4 games?
job done. People were suddenly talking about the clues inside of these things, searching for the hidden lore. They were actively making jokes about dead kids at pizzerias. Her husband's twisted history of serial murder had suddenly been reduced to a mere Nancy Drew mystery to be solved. The plan had worked. Freddy Fazbear's was suddenly more popular than ever.
It's become meta. They got people theorizing and joking about Freddy Fazbear Entertainment and the Bite of 87 that was actually the Bite of 83.
Things were going shockingly well. Her takeover and reboot of the franchise was full and complete. Suddenly infused with cash, she built the largest, most ambitious project yet, the Mega Pizzaplex. William had always been so visionary, but always thought so small scale. He was careful to a fault. Not her, though. She knew that this latest project needed to be big. It needed to be flashy. It needed to be a palace for children. A place that got people talking and checking out the latest in Fazbear products. So with a steady supply of remnant flowing in, it was finally time. The stage was set. It was time to get to her real goal, literally rebuilding a family.
So I think what's been debunked is his wife isn't actually at the top, but building this pizzaplex in order to collect enough remnant in the place is interesting. And with also the animatronics with inside the game, we had examples of this when Roxy was crying and having a breakdown in her room. Chica was talking to herself. They seem to be a little bit more coherent and have their own personalities in, like, the games now. So I feel like maybe it's an animatronic that has become so coherent and, like, human-like that they're collecting the remnant themselves, maybe tying back into this tiger one, or even this glitch Bonnie that we see in the DLC. I don't know, I'm theorizing. And they're the bad guy?
March 2035. The first was obvious. The crying child. Her little boy. The one that was the first to get ripped away from her. She'd seen down in his bunker that William had gotten very close to replicating artificial humans using animatronic technology. So that's exactly what she would do. Rebuild her boy from the ground up using robotic parts. His shaggy brown hair, his favorite striped shirt, even down to small details that no one would notice, like the band-aid on his left knee. William's reason...
Hold on, that's Gregory, isn't it? Gregory has a bandage. And he wears shorts.
Search had even found ways of making animatronics that could bleed
artificial blood and
making them virtually indistinguishable from a typical human. He would never have any idea of what he actually was unless he was explicitly told. The only things that could possibly ruin the illusion were any overrides to his internal systems.
And this would be the virus? Oh, and that's why he's calling for help, because it's actually not him, because he's been ridden by the virus, and that's why Cassie ends up coming in, because he's being controlled and it's not actually him anymore.
If something were to, say, interfere with the cameras that he had in his eyes, or cause some sort of a core reboot to his hard drive, or x-ray his metallic bones, then yeah, he would be exposed. But otherwise, to the outside world, he was just your typical, normal human boy. She worked down in the bowels of the Pizzaplex, giving him life.
Whoa,
but it was
hey, that's the room.
It was another to help him remember his identity. He died so young, so early in their history that there was no preserved memories for him. No documentation that she could just download into his digital brain. So bit by bit, she trained him, forcing him to remember who he was.
There you go, Dobby. This is a sock and this is a poster of your family. Now, people are drawing comparisons, and also maybe this room is connected to the Mimic and learning and mimicking everything that's been going on as well. So it's either Gregory or it's the Mimic. I don't really know. Let me know down in the comments your theories in this post-it note room and who you think it is. Or is it both? Is it maybe a mixture?
In a corner of the room, she even made a makeshift dinner table, a reminder of their happier days.
Yeah, that was kind of cool
recreated
when we see that
two
Easter egg.
brothers, a sister, a father, and the mother at the head of the table. The one in charge, the one in command, the one bringing all of this to fruition. But his progress was admittedly slower than she would have liked. At first, he could only communicate through simple ones and zeros, then rudimentary drawings and crude letters. But bit by bit, images of his past life started to come through. Balloons, colors, houses, bears and faces, birthday parties, all for me. Gregory was alive. As the robot boy embraced her, she felt a warmth that she hadn't in decades. This was the joy that she'd been working towards. This was what it was all for. Her son, back in her arms again. The plan was...
Because there's also that code in the sister locations room in the Pizzaplex as well. It's supposed to be some sort of language. I can't remember the words that was actually on the wall, but that's also another thing. And what John, or FNAF, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, was saying and referencing as well was also the vampire story on the actual TV in reference to maybe Mike.
Was working. She had to keep going.
If I remember correctly.
If the family was truly going to be put together, she would need him. And she knew exactly where he was, in the ruins of that old Freddy Fazbear's pizza place where Henry had trapped him. In fact, that's specifically why she insisted on building the Pizzaplex there over the sinkhole. It was the best place to hide what her true intentions were with the entire operation.
So they... Oh, I did not know that. So whoever bought it and whoever is behind the Pizzaplex intentionally knew that is the location that we need to build on, because that is where they are.
Digging through the wreckage, she found him. He was right where she thought he was. Seeing the putrid shell of the Springtrap suit, though, was not something she was prepared for. The rotting corpse of William Afton was disgusting. Scorched flesh fused into the fur lining. Hollow black sockets where eyes once were. A smell that reeked of burned carbon and bloody iron. He was no longer flesh. He was just the tangled sinews of a creature that was once called human. How far this brilliant man had fallen. It was clear that her work was cut out for her on this one. Afton was practically lifeless. The man may not have been able to die, but he was about as close as you could come. And his body would need a lot of reconstruction. Replacement arms and endoskeleton reinforcements were the top priority. Maybe pulled from their new line of glam rock animatronics. She'd have to see if they had any spare Bonnie parts lying around that they could steal. In the meantime, though, she threw the husk that was once her husband into a life support pod infused with aerosolized remnant to help keep him stable. But more important than recovering his body was recovering his mind. In his current state, he was comatose, an empty shell. Severe brain damage starts at temperatures over 108 degrees Fahrenheit, 42 degrees Celsius, and years of repeated fires had burned his brain to goo.
So she's going to use the digital version of Afton and put it inside of that, but people are saying that, oh, this is the thing, it's possibly the Mimic and it's not even Afton himself. It might just be a digital version of Afton that the Mimic has put in. I don't know. You got viruses, hard drives, digital SSDs, you got VR. It's like... What is going on? We got I Am Robot going on with all the animatronics becoming coherent. It's going to be like a Detroit Become Human scenario. It's hard to keep up.
Gone was the brilliant, frustrating mind that had drawn her to him in the first place. But she had a plan. Unlike her darling boy Gregory, Afton had found ways to record his consciousness. Fundamentally, the brain is only a series of electrical connections after all, so why couldn't you replicate that in the form of a standard circuit board? In essence, you could create a digital consciousness. And one thing she knew about William, he was nothing if not cautious. A planner. Someone
So
with
Henry
backup
must have
plans
done
to
this
his
before he
backup
died as well.
Sure enough, there it was. Buried in piles of old animatronic CPUs, a record of Afton himself. But he needed someone to test.
Just little
Someone
sickness.
was definitely here during the night. It had to have been the client. I mean, they sent us that stuff in the first place with no explanation, told us to scan
What are
it,
these
said
tapes
it would
connected to
expedite the
anyway?
process so we wouldn't need to program any pathfinding ourselves.
Unlike the other games that she'd paid to have made in the past, this one had a different purpose.
Of course it's the one that's that I haven't played because it's VR. Oh man, I need to play Help Wanted.
This wasn't about PR, it was about getting William back up and running, spreading his virus to the masses.
You acknowledge that Fazbear Entertainment is not responsible for accidental digital consciousness transference, real-world manifestations of digital characters.
She hired a new developer, Silver Parasol Games, to scan the boards and bring her husband into the system. And because of the immersive nature of VR, William's consciousness would be able to merge with the player, giving him a new body, a new agency. There was just one complication. Afton's hold wasn't as powerful as she had hoped. He wasn't able to gain complete control. The first trial run, Jeremy, was so desperate to escape from his grasp that he sliced his own face off with a paper shredder.
Oh, that's a bit harsh, isn't it? Oh, well, you ain't getting your face back. And that's where Vanessa comes in, isn't it? Because that's how he's able to communicate through into the real world, isn't it? I think, if I remember correctly.
Messy.
She's just
Afton's
under
followers
Afton's control.
were reluctant, to say the least. But it was the second attempt that looked like it had the potential to kill two birds with one stone. Enter Vanessa. Mrs. Afton wanted a surrogate daughter. Her darling Elizabeth would have been a young woman at this point if she had lived. And Clara wanted someone who wasn't Elizabeth, but could be just like her. Could she have just rebuilt her like Gregory? Sure.
Maybe.
But she decided against it because she wanted an actual human mother-daughter connection. Well, that, and it would be redundant and narratively unsatisfying to have two robot kids in the same family. What could she say? William had put a lot of tools on the table for her to use, and she was planning on using them all. Plus, Elizabeth had always been so loyal to Daddy. It was time to give her a second chance, a true choice. And Vanessa seemed to be the perfect candidate to fill the role.
Your dad's name was Bill? Your dad didn't play fair, did he? He used to make your mum look bad in court. He
We listened to
manipulated
these
you. I
in the
know
sister
your
location
mum.
room.
After she lost the custody case.
I was supposed to be a good girl.
She started as a QA tester at Silver Parasol Games, the VR game development company that was part of her plan to bring back William. But more importantly, Vanessa checked all the correct boxes. Right age, blonde, green eyes,
how
with a
unlucky is
fondness
that?
for flowers and the outdoors. In many ways, it was her daughter all over again. Except it wasn't just looks and personality. What really mattered was Vanessa's mind. Underconfident, coming from a broken home, motherless, able to be manipulated.
Maidenless.
Yes. She would do nicely. She would be the one to save dear old Daddy, just as the real Elizabeth would have wanted.
I will make you proud, Daddy.
While testing the VR game, William's digital consciousness merged with Vanessa. Oh sure,
Yes,
she fought,
and this is where we get
fragmenting
glitch
Afton's
trap,
code
is it,
into
or
a series
digital
of
glitch
tapes
trap?
hidden across the game, trying to do web searches to regain control over her life, but it wasn't enough. She was weaker than Jeremy. She was a thrall that, despite occasional moments of lucidity, had to obey. And with Vanessa, it was a 2-for-1 deal. She was getting a daughter back, while also bringing her husband one step closer to reactivation. She just had to make sure that Vanessa was headed the right way. The reborn Gregory was an expert hacker. Part of the benefits of being an Afton.
Oh yeah. Was it Freddy that talked about when we got the voice line of this in Pizzaplex? I was like, what? Mr. iRobot now.
So Clara had him keeping tabs on Vanessa, hacking into her emails and trailing her therapy sessions to ensure the future Elizabeth was falling in line. If any of the therapists started to ask too many questions, they were promptly dismissed from their positions. And while Gregory kept tabs on Vanessa's personal life, Mrs. Afton made sure to clear a path for her professionally. With Silver Parasol's collapse at the hands of the Anomaly, she then had the possessed Vanessa bring the contaminated circuit boards to DLZ shipping and the Fazbear Funtime service. More glitches, more Remnant, more Afton. But it was her
So with the... Okay, this is where it gets a bit... Because we know there is a mimic virus, and we also know there's a part of Elizabeth somewhere as well. If we're going off John's recent theory video with the things, so we've got a digital version of Baby as well. So they've all collided digitally, maybe, then?
Last move that was the best. In a true masterpiece of poetry, she brought Vanessa over to be chief security officer at the Pizzaplex. A true family tradition
there was
to
a
don the hat
letter.
badge. And all it took was a recommendation from the top, as well as some emails marked for deletion. Sure, Vanessa didn't have relevant experience for the job, but when it comes directly from the CEO, does it really matter? Husband, son, daughter. A corpse, a robot, a human. All that was left was Michael. Poor, troubled Michael. The boy that killed her youngest. The one that would spend years trying to make his guilty conscience right again. A self-professed protector. While she knew she needed him to complete the family, something told her that the problem had already solved itself. Something had shifted when using Glamrock Freddy to excavate the buried pizza place.
I have been here before. I found myself for the first time when I cleared the path. I have changed. My friends are here, but I can protect you. I am not me.
Maybe it was the remnant that had coursed through Michael's veins. Maybe it was the spirit of Michael living on as a protector, but he was there, somewhere inside.
Maybe Henry. I'm not gonna let it go. Maybe, just maybe when he trapped himself inside of there as well. Wouldn't they all be jammed together then? Would it be a combination of all of them if they were all burnt alive? This is, it just gets so confusing.
Of Glamrock Freddy. She could feel it. And just like that, she'd won. She'd done it. Sure, there were still some kinks to work out, some final brainwashing of Vanessa, some rehabilitation of William, but they were there. Finally, all together again under one roof. The Aftons reunited. A happy ending. And that's how it could have ended. That's how it should have ended, had it not been for a few unanticipated developments. For one, something was
now
just
we get
wrong
into this as
with
well.
the Pizzaplex. Almost as if the entire building was haunted, possessed. Puppet plushies hiding on ceilings, behind crates, places that they had no earthly
with the
way of
marionette,
belonging.
isn't it?
Staff bots with greasy tears down their eyes, acting like they were being puppeteered by some sort of a nightmare. Even their sounds had the echo of nightmares long past. It was as though a guardian spirit of the past refused to move on. As long as her husband was around, it too would linger. Only now, it wasn't just in one body, but it was in the essence of the building itself. She had seen stories of houses built on burial grounds getting possessed by angry spirits, but she'd never assumed that it could be real. Then again, in a world of living spirit metal and mind-controlling glitches, who was she to be so judgmental? The whole thing was ridiculous. Why would this be the line that she refused to cross? After all, the Pizzaplex was built over the burial ground of angry spirits.
And what I still don't get as well is, because I haven't played Help Wanted because I ain't got a VR headset, is the Vanny mask where you take it on and off. Do you see like the digital version then that we see in the DLC trailer? Is that like the digital version of the Pizzaplex, and that's kind of what the digital side sees? So the viruses and stuff, we could actually see what's going on around. And is this also, like, connecting Charlotte in some way that is controlling all of these mimics and endoskeletons to go against the Pizzaplex?
But it was the power cords that finally convinced her that something was wrong. Suddenly, these cords were striped black and white, like the
Slappy Van Winkle
from generations ago. The very foundations of this place, the materials and wires that constituted it, were rebelling against her, against the Aftons, against the quest to bring them all together again. And it was being helped by something else, something slithering through the building. If they were connected, she couldn't be sure, but a blob of living wires could be heard oozing through the walls, stealing pieces and parts of the old animatronics showcased in Rockstar Row. She could only assume that it was a byproduct of all the remnant they'd been collecting. From Afton's testing, she knew that both light and dark remnant existed, one of positive emotions and the other created from anguish, anger, agony.
See, this is why I'm going back to the theory that something is so coherent themselves as an animatronic, they are collecting the remnant.
Perhaps this thing was an amalgamation of all the darkest parts of the pizzeria's history. A collection of the hatred still housed inside these defunct endoskeletons and exosuits. As long as it was left alone, it seemed to be harmless. But if any Afton outside of Michael got too close, it would lash out wildly.
So correct me if I'm wrong, the blob is the... like the connection of all of them being burnt in FNAF 6. That is the outcome of FNAF 6. The blob. And then it's just expanded
Even
upon
young
this.
Gregory, looking to punish the family that had been complicit in its horrible creation. Little did she know, though, that Gregory should have been her biggest concern. That bringing the family together would have some unforeseen consequences. Gregory was normally the goodest of boys. She had literally built him that way. But lately, he'd been disappearing more and more often, disobeying her orders. Requests. She knew that he loved playing on the arcade machines once the Pizzaplex closed, being so good as to top the leaderboard on practically all of them. But lately, he was nowhere to be found. She suspected his absence had to do with Glamrock Freddy's failed performance the other night, when he malfunctioned live on stage. Almost as though the core programming of Freddy responded to seeing this rebuilt small boy. Almost.
So he's already been affected by the virus then, essentially, Gregory has?
Almost like it awakened something inside of him. She'd have to make sure that Vanessa was on the lookout for him, but she'd soon come to learn that Vanessa wasn't enough. Whether it was the influence of the nightmare puppet or a reawakened hatred of animatronics seated deep in Gregory's code, something had caused him to rebel, to rip apart each animatronic in the Pizzaplex.
We do go on a killing
this
spree.
boy was tearing down the empire that she'd so painstakingly built, freeing Vanessa from her mind control, destroying the remains of Afton in the basement, setting Glamrock Freddy loose. As her carefully created world crumbled around her one more time, she began to plot her revenge. She would have to bring them all to ruin.
Hey, hey, I like what you did.
There you have it, my friends. Nearly a decade in the making, my FNAF timeline.
Okay, that was an interesting theory.
Here in 2023, the year of Fazbear Frights, by the way. As always, it wouldn't be right for me to finish without going over some of the more controversial takes that I just handed out. I think we can all agree that this part of the timeline was always going to be the hardest. So let me just break down some of
Yeah, because I still, obviously, you're probably screaming at me like, this is the part that's debunked. I don't know. I won't know until I read the comments. But I think it's his wife is the one. The connection with the blob and the marionette and stuff, I think is seems kind of solid, and rebuilding the family is possible due to the technology that they had.
The major points. First of all, the biggest swing of this episode, and obviously the one that everything else rests upon, Mrs. Afton being the CEO of Fazbear Entertainment LLC. Here's why I went with this route. Now, first and foremost, the head of Fazbear Entertainment is the single biggest mystery that we're meant to solve at this point in the lore. The Ultimate Guide brings it up repeatedly. Who's running the show? Who is okaying these decisions? And in the security breach memos, we get multiple mentions of someone manipulating things from the top down. Whoever this is, they are the person driving forward every other facet of late-stage FNAF lore here. They're the puppet master who's hiring the indie dev. They're the ones relaunching the brand, building the Pizzaplex over the burial ground. So everything at the end of the timeline relies on this one singular answer.
Henry. I always come back. It's him all along. Or it could just be someone totally new, as this is a new era of FNAF, and they could introduce a new character that we're all like, huh? Yes, it was connected all along. Yes, we're just gonna sprinkle some crumbs back into the older games, so it looks like that we've got some.
Now, as I see it, there are two possibilities here. One, an adult robot Elizabeth, like we see older versions of robot kids in the fourth closet, or Mrs. Afton. Could it be someone completely new to the franchise? Absolutely yes, but in a game with so many returning faces and repeated themes, it would be pretty random and arbitrary. So, between these two girl bosses, who then would it be? Well, Elizabeth always wants to please her.
Okay, this is gonna sound nuts, and I know I've been kind of hammering home with Henry, but if Henry ended up finding a way in order to digitally upload his conscious like Afton, and they've also got the mimic thing that they're aware of as well, maybe someone rebuilt Henry and put his consciousness inside of a mimic, and that is him. They make him human-esque with all the different stuff that they've got, all the real-life blood, and that's Henry that ends up coming back. And he's at the top, and he finally owns everything after so long in the betrayal with Afton. And maybe that's why he built the Pizzaplex on top, because he knew that he would have him trapped down there, and he was in control, because he owns the actual place forever? I don't know. Maybe that's far-fetched. Maybe that's not even anything. But I like theorizing little things. Or let me know in the comments.
Daddy, so she'd be most likely wanting to bring him to life. But then, what's Vanessa's role in all of this? Vanessa is clearly meant to be a parallel for Elizabeth. Same hair, same eyes, similar backstories, but if the main goal is getting the Afton family back together, which seems to clearly be the case in Security Breach, then there's no need for Vanessa to be involved at all. We already have Elizabeth running the show. It would also mean that we suddenly have 2 robot kids running around, which feels narratively repetitive and quite frankly kind of dumb. Now look at Mrs. Afton. We know next to nothing about her outside of any clues that we can get from Immortal and the Restless and the Lore song. But what her being head of Fazbear does is make every other piece of the lore fit. Suddenly, you can have a piece of every other type of character. 1 robot kid in Gregory, 1 brainwashed human in Elizabeth/Vanessa, 1 OG corpse in William, and 1 possessed animatronic in Mike.
Did Afton's wife know Henry much? Because they were partners back in the day, so they must have had some sort of connection. I don't think there was any hatred towards each other. I know, I'll stop with the Henry.
But narratively, it makes everything else cleaner. Legally, it's also the option that makes the most sense. As I call out in my narrative, she'd likely have some stake in the original company and all of its assets. So as Fazbear folds as a company, I'd suspect a lot of it would return back to her. But there was one clue that really sold me on this particular direction, and that was this right here, in the Post-it room, the big lore central of Security Breach, a dinner table scene with the whole family, including the mother. And not only is she there, she is at the head of that table, the position of highest honor and responsibility. She is the one in charge, with William being relegated off to the side. That one scene shows that we have to include Mom in there somewhere, and the only place it makes sense for her to be is at the top. Now, there is one big dilemma with my interpretation of all this. The Ultimate Guide really seems to point out that the head of Fazbear doesn't want the glitch trap virus to spread. They call out one particular email in FNAF AR where the legal team calls a cease and desist to all action about scanning the circuit boards. And even in FNAF VR, we're told that the circuit boards get stolen back by the client, presumably once they realize what danger is on there, trying to stop glitch trap before he spreads and gets out of hand. Here's the problem with that though. If the head of Fazbear doesn't want Afton to rise again, why'd they restart the company in the first place? Why'd they build over the FNAF 6 pizzeria? Why'd they go through an elaborate cover-up to make the possessed Vanessa an important part of the company? Just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It would be the most inconsistent series of actions ever, but I did want to call attention to it since it seems to be the route that the official guide is trying to steer us towards. Moving on to minor point number 1, the Five Nights at Freddy's games were made by the rogue indie developer. Here's the thing, FNAF VR opens with this line.
That's why we have recreated many of these completely fictitious scenarios, lies that you've been fed over the last several years, into a hilarious VR game.
It's recreating the lies told to you by the indie developer. And since Help Wanted has direct recreations of FNAFs 1 through 3, it means the games must be part of the fabrications that this developer made up. Also,
so Help Wanted 2, we know, covers Five Nights sister locations, not FNAF 4 because that is a nightmare of the crying child, if I remember correctly, or it might be Michael. There's so much to remember. And then FNAF 6. That's where we might get the answers if they put FNAF 6 into Help Wanted. But I don't know if they would.
So, all of this is heavily implied in the story of the same name, Help Wanted and Tales of the Pizzaplex, hence FNAF 1 through 3, canon games within the lore of the series. Big swing number 2, the elephant, or ghost in the room, Charlie infecting the Pizzaplex. John from the channel FNAF has made some great findings about Charlie's influence over the Pizzaplex. The cables that looked like the striped arms of the puppet, the Nightmarion plushies that you find hidden across the Pizzaplex in weird places, the staff bots with creepy smiles and in your dreams written on the front. All of these things scream puppets. Plus, with the puppet mask not having tears in the blob, seems to imply that Charlie's spirit exists elsewhere. She is still in play, and she has an important role, especially in Gregory's Post-it room. The doors to the Post-it room in the game's code are called Charlie doors, and inside we see a bunch of lit up nightmare staff bot heads. Suspicious, to say the least. The channel ID's Fantasy did a great theory looking at the Post-it notes, concluding that the crying child / Gregory isn't alone in this room, but rather might be communicating with someone. A spirit, Charlie.
Not the remnant, goddammit. It's all about the Faz Guru Remnant. this is where the mimic comes into play, or the potential theory around that is that could be communicating with the mimic.
Charlie's spirit seems to have pulled a poltergeist. Instead of controlling one thing, she's affecting a lot of little details, foundational elements of the Pizzaplex. And this isn't the first time that we've seen this in the franchise either. We've seen spirits communicating with people through physical writing in the survival logbook. So we know that this is an established means of spirit communication within this franchise. Really? And I suspect that to some extent it might be Charlie's influence making Gregory go haywire. Which brings me then to my final and probably biggest controversy in recent FNAF history, Gregory as Patient 46, the evil robot mastermind. Now, I know when I first came out with this theory a year ago, people were mad. But here's the thing, you don't have to take my evidence points for it anymore. The recent Tales from the Pizzaplex story, GGY, basically goes and just outright proves it. In GGY, we find out about a boy named Gregory who's getting all the high scores in the Pizzaplex arcade machines. When therapists start to go missing, it's confirmed that GGY is the one that's working to bump them off. And when animatronics start getting corrupted by a mysterious glitch, GGY's letters are found inside the code. He even chooses the code name Dr. Rabbit, for crying out loud. But obviously, by the time of security breach, Gregory is working against Burn Trap, Vanessa, and the animatronics. Why? How? Well, it's not really clear. I tend to believe that something must have happened to cause him to either lose his memory or be reset in some way. Maybe it was Charlie talking to him in his post-it room. Maybe he hit his head. Maybe it was the connection that he made with Mike on stage in Glamrock Freddy.
Okay, this is... so possibly Gregory is going to be the bad guy and ruined? What? We've also glitched spring or body?
Not exactly sure, and I don't think we have enough clues to solve any of it yet. But it makes sense from a story perspective why he'd start off evil on Afton's side and then switch to trying to destroy him and not knowing who he is in security breach. And with that, my friends, I'm wrapping this thing up. Congratulations, we are on page 40. 22,000 words of FNAF, baby. Practically just wrote myself a Tales of the Pizzaplex short story. Have I answered everything? No. Does everything fit cleanly? No. But does it feel like the best and most cohesive narrative for all these characters that addresses most of the evidence we're given? Yeah. For me, honestly, it really does. And let's be honest with ourselves, the DLC will probably come out later this year and prove me completely wrong.
It's in July.
Wouldn't be the first time. Then comes the movie, whatever. My descent into madness continues. But regardless,
I am
so
nuts.
proud of this. This was a massive undertaking. And I'm so proud of our editors who have just destroyed the editing across all 4 of these installments. You guys are the best.
Edits.
Thank you for pushing through on 20+ minute uploads. You are unreal and your talent is unrivaled. I'm so lucky to work with you guys every single day. And like I mentioned before, keep an eye on the channel for an announcement regarding a talkback live stream with some special guests.
Yes, we ended up watching this as well when it was at the time.
So that one's coming up soon. And with that, my friends, we can finally rest. I can leave the demon to its demons with one final reminder that it was all just a theory. A game theory.
And there we have it. The final ultimate timeline. I still have a lot of questions regarding the theories and stuff around FNAF, but I feel like you're always going to have ideas and stuff regarding FNAF's lore because it is so complex. But Ruin does come out next month and we are going to be playing that. I'm going to bring a lot more games and stuff to the channel. The uploads are going to get back. So thank you as always for joining me on this video. If you're watching this as a singular video or you're watching this as the mega compilation as well, thank you so much. I really do appreciate all the support on the channel. And let's see if we can get, what should we say? Help 100k by the end of the year. Let's try it. Let's reach for the stars, baby. As always, take care, and I will see you in the next video.
3
bye.
and 4. Count what you have now. Don't count what you don't